This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. The preseason is almost wrapped up. This weekend will be the last weekend of preseason games before we get into regular season prep. And even in a couple of days, I think August 27th, you get the final 53-man cut down rosters of every team, which means there are going to be guys who get cut from these teams that could potentially help the Cleveland Browns. Who are some of these players you should keep an eye out on, and why should you keep an eye out for some of these players? I'll tell you. Let's jump into it. First player I have on this list is Chris Brooks, a 6'1", 219-pound running back. It's funny to me because when I was watching Chris Brooks play, in my mind I was thinking, oh, this is what a lot of people sold me that like Aiden Robbins would be. I look into Chris Brooks, and turns out he played at BYU, same as Aiden Robbins. I like this player. I like what I've seen from him from the Miami Dolphins training camp and preseasons the last couple of years. He's a big-bodied running back who has pretty good vision and feet. He's able to maintain balance when contacted, which is a big thing here. And he's one cutting downhill. So he's super simple as a runner, and he's physical as a finisher, which I think is one of the most important traits for a running back to have. If we look at the Miami Dolphins depth chart, they're stacked, right? They have Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and Jeff Wilson Jr., Jalen Wright. So it doesn't appear that Chris Brooks is going to be a favorite to make the roster. This is going to be somebody that they're going to try to sneak back onto the practice squad. I think he could take up a roster spot here on the Cleveland Browns. If you look at the Cleveland Browns running back situation, Nick Chubb might be on PUP to start the year, which means you'll have an extra roster spot. We don't know what the status of Nyheim Hines will be. Nyheim Hines is ready for the start of the year, then you might not be as inclined to get a running back. But if Nyheim Hines is not ready for the start of the year, well, then you might want to consider getting somebody else. I don't think Pierre Strong is somebody that the Browns should continue to roster at this point, especially on the main 53 roster, maybe in the practice squad. I don't think Aiden Robbins has earned a roster spot. Maybe he can sneak back onto the practice squad. Maybe in a year or two, he'll be more ready. But I just have not been impressed with the work that he's put out so far during the season, although he did have a good showing at the end of his last performance. But that being said, it's not good enough for me to feel comfortable about him being on the 53. So I don't think that it'd be Aiden Robbins. John Kelly Jr. already got cut. So you're talking about the Browns having two healthy running backs right now in Deontay Foreman and Jerome Ford. You're probably going to want to have 3 or 4 running backs. The Browns usually keep 3 to 4 running backs. Nick Chubb's going to be on PUP. You don't know the status of Nyheim Hines. You probably want to pick up an extra body. I think Chris Brooks would make sense. He's somebody you can put on the roster right now. I think if you had to play him, he'll be fine in that role, but he doesn't carry as big as a name as the other guy I'm going to mention, to where you probably can't put him on the practice squad. But that's what I think about Chris Brooks. Let's talk about the other running back that I have here, and that's Cam Akers. Cam Akers is a big name. He's a former second-round pick. He's somebody who was productive on a team that won the Super Bowl. He is a clear upgrade to Pierre Strong, or even you can make the argument Nyheim Hines if you really wanted to. There's some upside there. I think the good things about Cam Akers is that he really does know how to navigate traffic well. And if you're asking, will Cam Akers get cut from the Texans, I think there's a good case to be made. Right now, he's sitting at 3rd or 4th on the Houston Texans depth chart. They already have 2 running backs that they like on that roster starting, Joe Mixon. And I think He'll probably be available. He doesn't look like he's a part of their plans as a three-headed monster. And he's played a lot in the preseason, which indicates that he's not a part of the Texans' plans, really. So I think Cam Akers could be somebody you can use. He's played well in the preseason this year, was really productive in 2022, and I believe his rookie year as well. And the navigating traffic thing might become important because we're not sure how good of a run blocking offensive line this Browns team is going to be. Even when they were healthy last year, they weren't the greatest run blocking team. So you don't want somebody who could break some tackles, and that's why I brought Cam Akers and Chris Brooks up, because those are both guys I feel confident can break a couple of tackles if somebody leaks through in the line of scrimmage. Cam Akers can probably navigate around it a little bit better, but Chris Brooks is not going to get stopped behind the line of scrimmage. So I like both of those running backs. If they become available, I would keep my eye out to see where they are on the waiver wire and if there's somebody that the Browns can pick up. Let's talk about a couple of DBs, because I don't think this has been talked about enough. The Browns are probably going to have to get some DBs. They look pretty short on DB depth right now because two of their corners that they rely on are kind of questionable as far as their status for week 1 and their status for the rest of the season. Greg Newsome is coming off a hamstring surgery. And the problem with the hamstring surgery is that even if he gets back from that and he recovers fully from that hamstring surgery, it's a high re-injury risk injury, right? Like that, there's a chance that he's going to keep popping up on injury reports throughout the year. And if it's just Greg Newsome, you're not that concerned because you got Cam Mitchell back there. And while Cam Mitchell is not as good as Greg Newsome, he's good enough that you to put him out there and you don't feel like you got a giant hole in the secondary. The issue is that you add this Denzel Ward concussion thing to it. Now, it's been like 10 days. He's still in concussion protocol. I wouldn't put up massive red flags yet, but there's a concern there, right? Because you don't know what concussion is going to be the concussion that really keeps you out for a long period of time. It's not as simple as like a muscle injury where it's guaranteed, okay, that muscle's going to heal within this time frame or that bone's going to heal within that time frame. When it comes to a concussion, yes, generally takes about a week or two to come back out of concussion protocol. But when you had a bunch of them, you can have a concussion linger for months, years. Not saying that's the case with Denzel Ward, but knowing that he has a history of concussions, you gotta be careful. You gotta make sure you feel good about the depth that you have on the position, which makes me kind of switch up my mentality with Cam Mitchell, where I can't think of Cam Mitchell anymore as the backup slot. I have to think of Cam Mitchell as the backup wide corner on this team, which means I would like them to bring in somebody you really feel like could play slot. Now, a lot of people are high on Miles Harden. I like Miles Harden, but I think Miles Harden has a little bit to learn before he can really be helpful to the Browns in games. Like, I would wait until like maybe week 8 of the season. Like, let him become an NFL player first before we slot him down for roles. I don't like doing that for 6th-round picks. Now, Keemon Hall from the Dallas Cowboys is somebody that I would look at and be very interested in. He's a slot corner. So far in this year's preseason, he's had a 8.3 QB rating allowed when targeted, and he's been targeted 10 times in this preseason. So tested pretty often. He has a decent enough 40 time with a 4.5 40. I think he'd be a good slot option to have as a backup. I also think Amik Robertson, my bad, would be a nice slot option for the Browns to go after. Another guy that you can see on the waiver wire and pick up. The Cowboys have a ton of DBs, so it's possible that that guy might not make the roster. Same thing with Amik there. So those are the two that I would really pay attention to as far as getting another slot corner, because I think the Browns are probably going to have to get another slot corner because they're down 2 right now. Now, Denzel can come back at any moment. But Greg is coming back off that hamstring injury. And even with both of those guys, even when they're back, you're still going to be concerned that they're going to miss like at least 2 or 3 games throughout the course of the season. And if they happen to miss 2 games at the same time, you're not really in a great place to make up for that. So that's something I want to keep out for. And then tackle, not going to spend too much time on tackle, simply because we've talked about tackle a lot, especially about what the Browns' solutions are. I have 3 names here that the Browns can look for on the waiver wire. I have more names on the video I made earlier this week about the tackles and what the Browns could do to trade for one. But here are 3 names that I'm going to put out there. Josh Jones, a guy that the Browns liked in the 2020 draft. There were reports that the Browns were meeting with him. He could be available. He could get cut from the Baltimore Ravens training camp, and think he would be interesting enough to bring in, at least as a backup tackle. Stone Forsythe, probably the best tackle on this list. Very experienced backup, guy who's been in there, out the lineup in Seattle. I think he'll be very fine for this team at that role. And then Leroy Watson, who's been on this team before, a good athlete at the tackle position, somebody that the Browns saw some upside with. And if he shakes loose from Tennessee, I think the Browns would be interested in him potentially being a backup tackle or something for the Cleveland Browns. But those are the guys that I think the Browns could steal off other people's rosters or steal off other people's practice squads. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Are there any training camp guys that you've seen around the league that you would like the Browns to sneak up on and grab? Let me know in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.